there was a point where I felt I, had a good shot at a potential promotion. I felt like I had worked hard. I felt like I'd, done, done the things I needed to do. But even though it looked like, it was going to be a great opportunity and it was like the pieces kind of were aligning, it didn't happen. And for a long time, it didn't happen, and not just not happen, but it didn't happen for like years.
Welcome back to another episode of Off the Wire, and this is part 2 of Tanner and I getting philosophical. And in this first instance of getting philosophical, we're gonna be talking about temperament. And Tanner, I'm gonna just call you out. You've got a note in here, and I'm gonna see what you mean by this. So there's under temperament, you've got a philosophy of being the duck versus the bison. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So every, I guess we not want to say every year, but periodically we do a leadership class and with up and coming leaders within the company. And oftentimes we're asked to kind of present to them like just our philosophy on leadership. And the way I've tended to structure things, I've talked about like basically lessons I learned throughout, right? Right when I started, I'm kind of my mid career and then even to now. And this is one of the ones I always use. So I grew up, in Watauga County, just about, 40 minutes from here. And at the place I grew up, we had a pond, and we had mallard ducks, and we had them every year. They would always hatch out little ducklings and grow, and we just really enjoyed that as kids. But one thing that always kind of stuck with me is the fact that when it rains, they don't like go hide. They don't really care when it rains. In fact, they're kind of at their best sometimes when it rains. But one thing as a child I noticed is that on their back, the water just beads up. And later on in life, I of course did the research, Googled that, and there's like a natural oil or kind of a waxy substance that basically they excrete, and then they like kind of rub all over their feathers. And what it does is it's kind of like kind of like a ceramic coating your car. It just makes the water really beat up, and so for me, the philosophy around the duck is to let things roll off your back. I think people, and I'm personally, I tend to take things very personally, and a lot of times people don't mean things personally.
Yeah.
And I also like, whether that's failure or something not going right, we tend to like, wear it like a tattoo. And in reality, that kind of stuff is more like a bruise. It's there, everybody sees it, but it actually goes away. So to me, the duck philosophy is let it roll off your back. That again, that's probably long winded, but I imagine you've had those situations in your career as well, and you just you got to let go a little bit.
As the more gray comes in, I think I am getting a little bit better with that. One thing I always try to keep in mind, sometimes I'll hear something that I won't like what I hear, but I have been very good at telling myself, no matter what you think about what that person just said, there is a nugget of truth in there, and that is almost always the case. And so, even if I hear something, like, I may take a minute or wait till I respond, because sometimes I do get bent out of shape pretty easily. But yeah, I think just keep in mind, let things fall off and think about what their, what was their intention in that and what they said. And there's always some nugget of wisdom in there if someone's telling you something, even if you don't like it. So what about the bison, Tanner? Tell me about
So the
that.
bison is definitely not something I made up. I kind of found that I ran across this, and I don't remember exactly where I ran across it, but someone was talking about a bison, and the way I think they were comparing like cattle and bison. So obviously bison, especially in the Midwest Plains area, used to be very prevalent, not as much anymore. But the big thing, the difference between like kind of a bison and another type of farm animal is like a cow or another animal. If there's a storm, like a big snowstorm or something, they will try to run away from it a little bit. But by running away from the storm, they actually end up being in the storm for a lot longer because they're like kind of moving, along with the storm. But what they have observed is in Bison, at Bison, I don't know whether it's just a natural instinct or whatever, but like whatever way the storm is coming, they basically turn and they walk directly into the storm. And really, the lesson that was taught from this principle and what I've tried to, I tried to incorporate, I guess, personally within leadership is that it's better to just go ahead and take on the hard things. Or if you're going to go through a rough time, it's better just to go ahead and like, don't run from it. Just go ahead, accept that it's coming, take it on, and then basically by heading into it, you're going to make it a lot less painful overall. Still going to hurt while you're in the storm, but ultimately, you're not going to be in the storm for nearly as long.
Yeah. In the Marines, we had a term for that. It was embrace the suck, and that's just kind
Yeah.
of, sometimes things are just comfortable and sometimes it's best just to lean into them.
So, Anthony, when we were coming up with we were kind of comparing our notes of what we had come up with. This was one that was on both of our lists, and it was talking about staying a little unsatisfied. What do we mean by that? Like staying unsatisfied as a leader?
It's really just be a little bit hungry all the time. And this is one where I actually struggle being too far on the unsatisfied side. So, what that means is like if you're unsatisfied, you're wanting to do constant improvement, make things better all the time. You're always seeing a way that you can improve things. And you definitely want a healthy dose of that, but you also want to be able to enjoy your wins. So, if you go too far, and each of us are different, some people they need to be a little less satisfied with things and try to look for more improvement. And but like I said, for me, it's one of those things I don't know what caused it in life, but that's where I just naturally lie. And but I have to tone it down a little bit and just kind of enjoy some of the wins that we have and remind myself of all the things that we've accomplished over the years. But what's that mean to you, Tanner?
Yeah, I would just kind of, for me, it's just a status quo thing. And one thing that we probably should mention with all of these things is, these little like, I don't know, tips or leadership principles or whatever. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there that moderation is kind of the key. Like, if you take anything, I'm sure everyone is listening has heard of a strength can also be a weakness, basically. That if you take a strength too far, so I do agree with that. Is you can ruin kind of certain things as well. But for me, it's just a status quo. I would preface this uneasiness as more of a curiosity, not necessarily like kind of looking at something and be like someone's doing this wrong, but more of like just trying to understand why they're doing it, right? And not not first understanding the why and then trying to understand like if it could be improved because I think a lot of times, especially as leaders, especially as young leaders, you always think, well, if we've been doing it this way for 5 years, then like I can make it better.
Yeah.
Like that you have thought of all the answers. And what I have found especially as I've gotten older, is do you think that people who originally did whatever that is, like didn't get in a room, discuss all the pros and cons, and try to like figure out like why they should go this way with that particular decision? Now, sometimes, and we talk a lot about technology, sometimes technology changes and that makes something a little easier to do now than maybe it was. But when that's not the case, like I found that usually in most good companies, you're preceded by good leaders too. And they went in and they, thought through all the things and the pitfalls and what they arrived on as a decision, you know, it probably was pretty solid. It doesn't necessarily mean it can't be improved, but I think improvement should start with understanding versus, just kind of calling people out on something.
Yeah, we've seen that. I can't remember the specific example, but we just had that, and we've got a lot of new senior leadership at our co-op, and but we do have one that he's been there a little while, and without him, he knows the context of why they made a lot of decisions. Without that context, it's really hard for us to figure out. A lot of times, we're like, "What were they thinking?" That just seems crazy that they would do that, but a lot of the context, it always proves like they had their reasons to do it. And it could be personnel changes, technology changes, or just changes in the law even, like, there's a whole lot of reasons why things were done the way they were, but, yeah, it's hard to figure that out, and if you didn't have someone that sat in the room, but I think it's definitely something to keep in mind that they did things for a reason.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think going along with that, and you tell me what you think on this too, is like something I've learned lately that I didn't really feel like I understood as a young leader is I would look at a situation like this particular situation and or even just a decision that someone else made and I would say like, well, like they had bad intent with this, that they that they meant it to like, not work well or they did this because of this reason. Um where like, come to find out later on probably that like the intent was good, even if it failed or didn't work how someone expected it to. They probably didn't intend it to fail. Putting yourself in their shoes, like you're not gonna like make too many decisions where you're like, I know this is gonna fail right off the bat, and let's just do it anyway. And I was looking through some of my notes for one of these presentations I've done, and I remember running across this Stephen Covey quote that basically says that we judge ourselves by what intentions we had when we made the decision or did the particular task, and we judge everybody else by the actions. So maybe you could just kind of roll that into, don't judge others more harshly than you judge yourself. But I don't know, thoughts on that?
No, I just think it's really about having empathy, put yourself and that's one of those things that's hard because things could be so different. Or you go back 10, 15 years ago or whenever these system or decisions were put in place, like, I'm sure things were just drastically different. It seems like, especially at, co-ops, we've had so much turnover and change in the last
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 years, it's like a 9-day difference. So the next item on here, Tanner, is don't forget your roots, and that's something you do see from time to time. You see a person that gets promoted over the years, and it's kinda like they forgot where they come from. You wanna elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is something I had experienced in my earlier career, and uh, you know, obviously early on in your career, you don't really know kind of where things are heading, right? You're working hard. You hope you have aspirations, ambition for what love to see later on, but you don't really know. But I remember, a particular leader that I knew, and I felt like they kind of when they walked down the hall, like people got out of their way, you know, and they kind of like liked that, that it was like I'm in this position and you're not, you're down there. And I got to thinking to myself, I was thinking to myself, I said, they couldn't have always been this way, right? Because at least in most companies, the companies I've worked in, like the people that are like that don't typically get promoted. So like something like they lost their way, like their path along the way, and what got them into that position, got that promotion, was probably a lot of those good qualities that we love to see in leaders. We've talked about some of them now, letting things go and, chasing improvements and all those things. But what they forgot is like, they forgot that. So it was just something that I kind of always said, like, if I ever get promoted to any leadership role, like, I'm just going to be me, and I'm not going to be what I think someone views a leader like. I think a lot of times, especially about when I was entry level roles, I viewed leaders as kind of cut from a box of what I thought a leader should be instead of just them, you know, and so making sure that like the things that get you to that promotion, that put you in that leadership position, that you stay that way, and that you always remember that um, you're just you don't have to like play a role in a movie about leadership. Just do the things that kind of got you there.
Yeah, people being humble, that means a lot to me, and matter of fact, I just had a discussion about someone that wasn't humble, and the person was trying to understand it. I was like, "Well, just imagine we went out to a restaurant and this person was, like, rude to the waiter or the waitress." I was like, "What would you think of that person?" Trying to put it in perspective. Someone that's humble, they're a whole lot more likable and approachable and a better leader. I guess unless they're in the TSA and then they have to be like that.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, we were. Gosh, we won't even go down that rabbit hole. But we had an interesting conversation about them at work. It was like, I think like being unhappy and yelling is like basically like listed as requirements on the job description. But So one of the other things we put on here and kind of temperament stuff is having patience, and I think one thing, and you tell me what you think, but I feel like as a non-leader, I underestimated how much patience you have to have as a leader.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
100%. And I I should probably have a list somewhere, but there's things out there that it's I mean, it may be like a 5-year plan, like, or even 20-year plan. There's decisions that we make where we will never enjoy the fruits of our labor, but you know what I mean? Like, but someone down the road is gonna enjoy that. Like, and honestly, those are probably some of the best decisions we're making, but we're just never gonna enjoy it, just where
Mhm.
that process or that change is gonna take so much time. But yeah, I definitely, as a leader, and this comes with dealing with people, dealing with processes, dealing with everything. I mean, you definitely need to be thinking about 1 to 3 years out, short term, especially with technology. But some things aren't technology, and they're people and processes, and you need to think about those things long term for the benefit of your organization.
Yeah, I just think you know wherever you look, and if you're a leader, or even and I want to say we didn't say this at the beginning. We probably should have is leader doesn't necessarily mean a certain title. You can be a leader in every single role. But I would say whether it's project related stuff, whether it's waiting on someone to maybe come around to a new way or a new change, or sometimes I think for us is like sometimes we've looked at stuff and it's like just the technology's not ready. Like we love to do it, but it's not prime time. It's not commercialized to a way that we need it yet. So patience in all areas, including potentially that promotion that you've thought you earned. Kind of one of the stories from kind of coming through my career. There was a point where I felt like I had a good there was a point where I felt I had a good shot at a potential promotion. I felt like I had worked hard. I felt like I'd done done the things I needed to do that. But even though it looked like it was going to be a great opportunity, and it was like the pieces kind of were aligning, it didn't happen. And for a long time, it didn't happen, and not just not happen, but it didn't happen for like years. And for a long time, I didn't know what to think in the moment. I was like, maybe then maybe they changed their mind. Maybe it wasn't going to be how I expected. But um, come to find out, I just really wasn't ready. I wasn't, and I look back on it now, and I think of how foolish it was to even think I was.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I was ready when the time did come, but looking back, I'm like, man, like I really, like the timing was perfect. Even though at the time I really thought it was, I thought the timing wasn't working out how I expected.
I've been there as well, and sometimes those things can feel devastating in the moment, and then you find out it may be a couple years and maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road, but you find out that sometimes it was such a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So kind of switching gears a little bit, we had some we as part of this like philosophical, really, we talked a lot about leadership with teams and kind of the leadership aspect that's direct to other people last episode, but on this one we're kind of talking about the more internal stuff. I mean, bandwidth or prioritization. I mean, I feel like in our world, in a lot of world, and maybe every leadership position, this is really what you're asked and tasked to do. I think a lot of times people think like maybe they think that the in our world like the technology is really what they're tasked to do, and what they're really tasked to do is to do the technology at the right time, and prioritize what should be done at certain times versus other times, and what can kind of sit there and wait. So Anthony, like what's your philosophy on prioritization? And I know we didn't really talk about this before show, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but how do you determine what's the right thing to do kind of at the right time?
Well, there's a million different ways to shake that, but one thing I'll just say with prioritization, for everything you say yes to, you're silently saying no to something else. So that's something to keep in mind. Um, I always think about as we're, things are suggested or, asked if, we can do things. Like I always think about what that thing is going to be long term. What's the maintenance? What's the overhead on our department long term? And some things people were just thinking, oh, that would be cool. But I'm sitting there, that's another device that we're gonna have to maintain forever and considering that. So that's one part with prioritization. The other part, I would say just leans into people and you need to just know what the company is capable of. And there was a quote, I can't remember who said it, but he was basically talking to Jeff Bezos with Amazon and he says, you got enough ideas to sink Amazon. And that's what Jeff Bezos, every time he had an idea, he was throwing it out there, and his people were reacting because he's the owner, he's the CEO, and people were just dropping everything they were doing to, roll out this new thing or idea that he had. And anyways, that's something especially as a technology leader, you need to be thinking about not only what your people are capable of handling, but what is the organization capable of handling. And that's really a lot of things that we make decisions on. Is the company ready yet? Is this too many changes in a short term period? The hard part is not technology. The hard part is when you combine the technology and the people together. That's where it gets very difficult. Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that, Tanner?
No, I mean, I do agree with that. I think that's, we may have talked about this last week, and it's probably more like in the team leadership section, but I'll mention it anyway. And I don't do a very good job of this. I'm kind of working on this myself, but is speaking last, like when you're coming up with new ideas, because if you don't, someone is going to basically kind of latch on to your idea because you're the leader, right? And they want to they want to do that, right? It's like if you're, if my boss comes up with an idea, then I'm gonna want to like attach myself to that. So if you really like want good ideas, I think it's best to just open the floor and like not basically give your own opinion until others have already. So that kind of goes along with that. I feel like is people are going to want to impress the leader. So whatever idea you come up with, someone's going to be like, "That's a great idea," you
Yeah,
know.
100%.
Um,
So the last item on bandwidth is managing energy, not just time. And that's one where I have definitely faltered with in the past. You've only got so much gas in the tank. I have a bad tendency to want to take on more things and do more things. And in the end, that means that basically I'm just going to do nothing well if I've just overloaded myself. So that's something I think every person needs to kind of think about as they're, taking on projects and taking on tasks. Is do they got the bandwidth? Not only do they have the bandwidth, do they have like the energy to actually handle that item? What's your thoughts on that, Tanner?
yeah, I might tweak that slightly. I like the idea of the energy thing, not just the time, but I would just say leave yourself time to just think. That I think a lot of times we as leaders, we fill our schedule, whether that's meetings or otherwise, and we don't really ever just take the time to like kind of ponder. Right. Something I've been trying to do in the mornings is on the way to work. I don't have any music, podcast, anything on. I just turn everything off. And what I'm finding, and obviously I'm not thinking about work on the way to work. Maybe I'm thinking about the night before or an upcoming weekend plan or whatever. But what I have found is like I get there's like almost like a weird stream of consciousness that happens where you just like your mind kind of like gets sharper,
Yeah.
and it stuff just flows and like ideas kind of just come out, and I feel like we could use some of that time in the office as well, to just kind of sit and take maybe it's not even a lot of time, maybe it's just 10 minutes, and just sit there and like think maybe we got a big problem we're dealing with, and instead of have you thought about all the times where we got some major problem, and instead of thinking about the problem, will like answer in a Teams message or something. Like just
Yeah.
take some time. Like take some time to think about things and just let your mind kind of release from all the distractions, so to speak. But and I think that can kind of rejuvenate you as well too.
I'm
Um,
gonna share a little secret on that.
what's that?
This is gonna hopefully, this doesn't get leaked at 4 County, but so there's always a joke, "Where's Anthony's hiding spot?" And, I this goes back to when I worked at Hewlett Packard. I used to have to go to these meetings, and basically we would have higher level people at the government that we were a lot of times I was presenting or providing guidance to in certain areas, for what we did, and related to cybersecurity. And what I found is I can think better if I'm walking. I like, same thing with driving. If I'm driving in the car, like, that's actually a good time to actually think
Mhm.
or ponder on things, but, um, I've kinda gotten into the habit where if I just pace around, like, I really kinda get into the flow and think of things. And so, actually, I'm not gonna time out where the spot is, but there's a area, it's not very big, but I go up there and I'll just pace around and literally start talking to myself out loud. And it's just sometimes I like if we got something big coming up and I need to think about it, stuff like that, like I'll go up there and kind of just ponder about it as I pace around the room. But
Yeah.
anyways, I definitely think that's important. What I'm bad at is I'll do it when it's absolutely necessary. I'll give myself time, but I think that's a good point of actually scheduling and dedicating time to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was having a conversation today, and talking about, um, you know, there's a particular a lady who is talking about like time management, and one of the things she says is basically you should really be blocking out your day for all your tasks. Now I don't know that I would go that far per se, but even just blocking out like I'm only going to look at emails between like these several times during the day. Maybe it's first thing in the morning, right before lunch, mid afternoon, end of the day. Maybe it's just 4 times. But just giving yourself those times where you can just completely kind of like lose yourself in focus in a particular area. I think people see as like multitasking, and this may be a deeper discussion on is multitasking a real thing, but I think people think they see multitasking, they're like, oh, I can answer team messages while I'm working on this other thing, while I'm doing this other thing, while I'm answering an email, and someone comes to my office and asks me a question. But I would argue that the person who basically takes one task and like dedicates their entire mind to it until it's finished, then the next task probably is more efficient than the other person and probably produces higher quality work.
Well, counter that a little bit. I think if you're a guy, yes. I think if you're a female, then you can 100% multitask. I think they are the stronger sex and they can handle that. We can't. I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, yeah. So I'll just say, coming from my own personal experience, we'll catch up with that. So, Anthony, we talked a little bit today, yeah, about, and you kind of introduced us with talking about kind of leadership things that are more internal, like specific to the leader versus like kind of external, leading a team. And I enjoyed the more philosophical conversation here. I'm gonna put you on the spot, and we haven't talked about this ahead of time. But when you talk about like yourself as a leader, if you could go back, we talked about all the things we talked about during this episode. The prioritization, the letting stuff go, all that stuff. If you could go back and tell pre-leader Anthony, you know, from when you first got a leadership role, if you could give him like one piece of advice, what would you do? What would you give him?
Well, the advice I would like to give my old self is to be more like a duck and let things roll off. But guess what? The old Anthony couldn't handle that either. So,
Yeah,
thinking of a realistic answer, I would just say don't dwell in the past. That's something that, I think all of us as humans, we sometimes we can dwell on past decisions or dwell on past projects and, let that hinder us. And that's something that I heard early on at 4 County. They're like, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. It's just a lot of people tend to dwell in the past, and there's several of those things where we revisit it, and it's successful going forward. And I'm not going to say it's definitely not because of me, but it's just because either the organization matured, or we just had a lot of different people in support of it. Anyways, that's just one of those things where still do it. I tend to do it even though I will critique someone that does it, but, don't dwell on the past would be a big one.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to end it. You know, with all the stuff we talked about, I think you can't have a better way to kind of bookend it there than to, we started with letting it go, and we kind of finished with letting it go. Not dwelling on our past mistakes. All right. Well, Anthony, uh, another philosophical episode. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Part two, we may do a part three. We may not. We'll see how much more of the content we have. If you want us to do a part three on this, reach out to us when we release this episode and let us know if you're liking this type of content. But I think we both enjoyed it. It's been kind of, you know, it's talking about the things that we all have to deal with, no matter the technology we're dealing with. So, but we're definitely going to have some good technology episodes coming up as well. And one more thing, before we kind of sign off here, Anthony and I are both going to be at Apex, the Meridian Conference, probably the last one of those. So we'll kind of try to go out with a bang on that. And I think we got a pretty good little breakout session slash podcast that we're going to do. And it's going to be talking about how, we talk a lot about how vendors can be better for companies, and in fact, I think we might even we had an episode talking about how to pick in the right vendor. But one thing we don't talk a whole lot about is how we can be better customers. So we're going to kind of flip the script, talk to the vendor, and ask them, how we can be a better customer. So I think that's going to be a really good one. So if you're attending that conference, definitely come check that session out. And also, if you see us around at the conference, come up and say, hey, we'd love to meet you and just talk for a little bit. But Anthony, any final thoughts before we sign us off?
Nope, real excited for that interview at Apex, but no other thoughts.
All right. Well, again, we do episodes every other week, releasing on Monday. Make sure you have your notifications on so you never miss any of our new content. And always reach out to us if you have feedback or if you have an idea for us, like an episode you'd like to hear us talk about. Just reach out to us. And until next time, this is Off the Wire.
Thank you, everyone.